There are some weeks when our friends in the fake performance art news media really go to incredibly heroic lengths to confirm that every bad thing we think about them is 100% true and correct. And oh boy, are we ever living through one of those weeks right now. Collectively, as an industry, the people we used to call journalists or the press, they are bending over backward to show us that they really are the loathsome, execrable creatures we already had every reason to believe they were. Everything about the coverage of this school shooting in Nashville serves as a potent reminder, as if we needed one, that the absolute last thing these people ever think about is, hey, what if we just tried to give as much accurate information as possible and let the viewers draw their own conclusions? Ha! You'd get laughed out of any newsroom in America for suggesting such a naively idealistic thing. Hey, look at Wally Cronkite over here wanting to report the news. What a maroon! And believe you me, this phenomenon will get a whole hell of a lot worse before it gets any better. The old codgers in the business, your Wolf Blitzers and your Anderson Coopers and what have you, they actually received proper journalistic training once upon a time, so they do know the difference and have cognizantly and shamefully chosen the path of becoming idiotic fake news performance artists who work with Joe Biden's hand directly up their asses. But there's a whole younger generation of personnel in those newsrooms who have come up through woke schools and woke universities and don't really have any idea that always slavishly servicing the preferred narratives of the progressive neoliberal left isn't actually how you do journalism. And this problem will only be further exacerbated by the fact that a lot of young kids who have the skills and the temperament to be good writers and potentially good reporters are going to avoid the news business because they don't want to do woke bullshit buffoonery for a living. And we've talked before about how there no longer is any pipeline from the real world into the news business, and that's a problem too. You can't become a reporter for the local paper by answering a want ad and passing a test like I did back when I was a boy. If you want that same job today, you have to spend 4 years on some woke university campus, receiving your Maoist political indoctrination, and learning how to use personal pronouns incorrectly. Which is crucial when you're training future professional writers, obviously. You should make extra sure they don't know the basic word usage rules of their own native language. And hey, Mom and Dad, aren't you glad you're getting all this for the low price of $80,000 a year? Bet you are. So you're going to have a news business 5 or 10 years from now that's even more infested with ideological lemmings who wouldn't know a journalistic instinct if it kicked them directly in the cunt and stole their purple hair dye. The kind of people who, when a big news story drops, they say, okay, how can we use this to help the Democrats win the next election? Because what, we're going to pretend that's not what they all really say every day? We're going to pretend they have any concern for any other thing? Because, spoiler alert, they don't. And if you're one of those people who's saying, but what about Fox News? Well, what about them? I would rate Fox News' editorial bent as probably only about 15% less leftist than CNN's. They have a few commentators in the evenings and on the weekend who say sensible things, but on balance, you'll hear a wide variety of wild leftist things all day long on Fox News. They still let Geraldo Rivera talk into a live microphone, for Christ's sake. And much of the news reporting on that channel is just as bad and just as left-biased as the news reporting on the actual leftist channels is. So how about let's stop making false dichotomies for ourselves and pretending there are good cable news channels and bad cable news channels? Because frankly, they all suck my ass. How about let's stop pretending things are conservative just because they maintain a polite distance from the very edge of the radical leftist lunatic fringe? You've heard me say it 20 times before, and here it comes again. Today's Republican Party is to the left of 2008 Barack Obama, and they don't care, because political parties are not vessels of ideology. Nobody at GOP headquarters gives 2 squirts of piss about your conservative principles. Political parties are vehicles for the acquisition and maintenance of power. That is all. Stop giving them any more credit than that because they don't deserve it. Jim Eagle, hit that music like it's Ringo's wife. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where they say true love is always just one cunt punch away. Wasn't there an old Carpenter song called that? Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And I'm going to open tonight by doing something I normally wouldn't. I'm going to use one of the fake news media's favorite pet phrases. I'm going to call, wait for it, for a national reckoning. On what, you ask? Well, not on systemic racism, not on climate change, not on abortion or gun control or any of the issues that normally receive the national reckoning label from your favorite fake news performance artist. No, I want to have a national reckoning on transgenderism. Not child transgenderism, mind you, not drag queen story hour, but the whole rotten enchilada. Because you know what we don't do often enough? And by we, I mean normal, decent, sane people who are the backbone of any well-ordered society. We don't ask the big questions. We often ask pertinent questions, important questions, reasonable questions even. But too often we just wind up nibbling around the edges by stopping short of the big question itself. So here it is. What value does transgenderism add to society? We're told that we not only have to tolerate this stuff, but that we have to affirm and even celebrate it, that we're not allowed to criticize it, and yet the proponents of the movement, the people who are seeking to impose their own rigid speech codes upon the rest of us, they never offer any arguments for how the thing they advocate adds any value to the lives of the public at large. All we get is weak-sauce, broad-brush, libertarian bullshit arguments about personal liberty. And look, personal liberty is all well and good. I'm a big fan of personal liberty. But when you are agitating for major society-wide change in basic social mores, when you're using intimidation and threats of violence to force people to affirm and acclaim it, shouldn't you at least be prepared to explain what the hell is in it for them? Now, Joe Biden said he wanted to be an historic president, and he has been in a variety of ways. None of them good. But instead of going off into the weeds listing the litany of his many, many failures, let's focus solely on the issue at hand. And I'm going to give you a question to ponder. When have we ever seen the U.S. government in our entire history expend this much energy on promoting a thing that has no demonstrable societal benefit at the population level? Something whose real-world effects are 100% degrading and corrosive, because I like to think I have a fairly decent working knowledge of American history, and I am at a loss to think of anything that compares. Normally, in a sane world, like the one we all lived in up until 5 minutes ago, when governments promote certain behaviors among the populace, it's easy to see what the intended result is and how it is demonstrably beneficial to the society at large. So, for example, it used to be totally uncontroversial that societies should promote and incentivize marriage, because if lots of your young people are getting married and reproducing, that secures your society's future by providing it a next generation. And if you incentivize people who get married to stay married, that means the next generation on which your society relies for its future is more likely to be made up of healthy, well-adjusted men and women. For another example, if a government promotes a strong work ethic and individual self-reliance, this too creates benefits for the society that are both demonstrable and desirable, because countries that are full of hard-working people are better equipped to deal with unforeseen calamities like wars and natural disasters and so on. Countries that are full of hard-working, self-reliant people do better at all the things that countries need to be good at if they want to become and remain great nations. Hard-working people grow more food. They build things on budget and on schedule. They don't require their government to expend resources on holding their hand and showing them how to do things and providing for their basic needs. For a third example, if a government promotes patriotism and a unified national identity, the benefits to the society are as obvious as they are manifest. That's why every single country on the face of the earth wants its citizens to be proud and patriotic. Well, every country except this one. A country that is unified around a patriotic ideal and takes pride in its national identity automatically does everything better than a country that isn't and doesn't. Seriously, what the hell kind of a country encourages its citizens to disrespect its flag and its national anthem? Not a country that wants good things to happen to itself, that is for damn sure. To the extent that there has been a Pax Americana for the last 80 years or so, a period without world wars, in which our country has been a largely benevolent global hegemon, that fact owes largely to the fact that the U.S. armed forces are seen as possessing moral authority on the world stage. They possess that moral authority for two reasons. One, because up until recently the U.S. military was a colorblind meritocracy and politically neutral. And two, because the people of the United States, who make up our armed forces, had, up again until recently, a strong patriotic tradition and a proud national identity. As well we should, because we have damn well earned it. Our fathers and our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers and our great-great-great-great-grandfathers, for that matter, earned it for us. And we don't have the right to piss it away, or else we dishonor every single one of them. So that's the short list of things that governments, all governments, everywhere, have traditionally promoted. Marriage, hard work, patriotism, unity, all of which have potential benefits that are demonstrable and obvious. Our current government doesn't promote any of those things, not even a little bit. If anything, they work in rabid opposition to all three, but they sure do spend a whole hell of a lot of time promoting transgenderism. I think every trans YouTuber with over 1,000 subs gets an automatic invitation to the White House. Sure seems that way sometimes. So it only seems reasonable then to ask, what is the population level benefit that redounds to the society from the normalization of dudes pretending to be women? Again, I know all about the personal liberty argument, and it's all well and good. I don't accept it. In fact, I reject it out of hand, but I do know about it. Why do I reject it out of hand? Because the idea that a man has a civil right to wear women's clothes in public and not be laughed at by normal people is utter nonsense that warrants neither serious consideration nor detailed rebuttal. Yes, you have the right to wear a dress in public, and I have an equal right, an inverse right, to make fun of you for doing that because you look like a damned fool. That is how freedom works. Please do make a note of it. Now here's a simpler way of asking the question. How is an America with 1 million transgenders automatically a better place in which to live than an America with 10,000 transgenders? Again, our federal government promotes this stuff relentlessly all the time, every single day. They've even got a Yogi Berra-looking dude in a woman admiral's uniform running around with scissors, offering to castrate people's sons on demand. If the argument is that we'll be a better country because those 1 million transgenders are now living as their true and authentic selves or whatever, could I please see some empirical evidence for that claim? Because from where this reporter is sitting, transgender people do not strike me as being happy and contented on the whole. In fact, on average, they seem pretty angry and very deeply troubled. I mean, maybe this is just me, but it seems like if you feel the need to plan an event called the Trans Day of Vengeance, then swapping out your gender pretty obviously didn't make you happier and more fulfilled. And there's another big question I want to ask tonight that nobody ever asks, and which I think has much to do with the current social contagion of transgenderism. What benefit did we gain as a society from legalizing prescription drug advertising on radio and TV? If you're old enough to remember 1997, you remember living in a world where you had never seen a prescription drug advertisement on TV ever. And it used to be commonly understood by everybody that why that prohibition existed, even though it seems to fly in the face of a literal reading of the First Amendment. But there was broad bipartisan agreement that it's not a good idea for prescription drugs to be consumer products, and the potential consequences to public health of allowing such advertising are so terrible to contemplate that the public interest requires the speech rights of the pharmaceutical companies to thus be curtailed. It was a correct argument, of course, because now, 25 years later, we are all living in that worst-case scenario, where all of those potential consequences have, in fact, come to pass. But have you heard one single member of Congress, one single news personality, even one single podcaster say we ought to reconsider that choice and go back to the previous prohibition that existed prior to 1997? Of course you haven't. And I trust you don't need me to explain why the hell that is. In fact, I would go so far as to say the bill that legalized prescription drug ads on TV and radio was the most disastrous piece of legislation to come out of the U.S. Congress in the last 30 years. It started off pretty slow at first. All the ads were for Viagra and Prozac and Rogaine and whatnot, and you mostly only saw them during sports telecasts. But as the years started creeping by, as the number and variety of pharmaceutical ads increased, we slowly built up a whole new culture around the idea that if there's something you don't like about your life or your body, if you occasionally have feelings you would prefer not to have, well, you are in luck, my friend. There's a pill for that. Talk to your doctor today. Fast forward to the year 2023, and fully 1 in 5 American women is on some form of antidepressant or tranquilizer. Now, what do you suppose the effect of that is on the population level? Good or bad? And moreover, what are the consequences of allowing the pharma industry to create a culture and a social climate in which everything about the human condition is negotiable and malleable and subject to modification? If I can take a happy pill to make my bad feelings go away, I bet I would be even happier if I went and got my wedding tackle cut off and turned into a weird pseudo-gina that smells like a dog's ass. We know the pill pushers and the medical profession don't mind any of this because they are richer and more powerful than they have ever been before. And never forget that no sector of American society believes more fervently in capitalism than the medical and pharma industries do. Do they actually believe a gender swap is going to improve anybody's life? Of course they don't. They're not that stupid. They just know how to say the words they are supposed to say in order to produce the desired response in the patient. And they know once they get a person on that transgender medicine quote-unquote assembly line, they're going to make millions of dollars off of him for the rest of his or her life. And let's not call them patients because they are victims, because this is not medicine. 100 years from today, the medical profession will still be trying to live down the fact that they enthusiastically promoted transgenderism in the early 2020s. The lawsuits are just now starting to fly. That is a good and proper thing. I want to see people and institutions utterly ruined and bankrupted who participated in this whole predatory scheme. We need to be taking names and never letting anybody live down their association with this ghoulish, monstrous, revolting bastardization of everything medical science is supposed to stand for. And the next time some asshole tries to look down his nose at you and dictate the things that you are required to affirm and to celebrate, go ahead and hit him with the biggest question first. What value am I adding to the society by celebrating that thing you want me to celebrate? What, you don't have a compelling answer? Well, good. Because you and your idiotic worldview can both fuck right off. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Have a pleasant tomorrow. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.